So this being about evaluation, a form of evaluation that I don't think we talk about very often is formative evaluation, or some kind of assessment beforehand to figure out where we are. A lot of our evaluation focuses on after a program has been implemented or after a policy has been put in place, we want to see if it's worked. But before we even put the program or policy in place, we want to get an idea of the lay of the land and what's happening. So I think that this tool, the Community Needs Assessment Toolbox, it's something that programs can use to complete that formative evaluation and to assess where they are in order to determine what programs or policies they might want to implement in the future. A couple years ago, I was funding 8 programs, and they were sort of across the spectrum of capacity and development and readiness to do prevention work. And I thought in order to help them practice the public health approach for their prevention work, completing a community needs assessment was a good way to accomplish those first 2 steps of defining the problem and identifying key risk and protective factors. And so each of those programs completed a community needs assessment. And while I was providing them technical assistance and support and sending them resources and saying, you know, for this data collection method, you may want to use this, or here's a resource for this, I realized all of these resources could be compiled in one place. And so that's kind of where the idea of this toolbox happened or came from. So like I said, the Community Needs Assessment Toolbox sort of came from this place of providing technical assistance and already finding a lot of these resources to give to programs. Some of these resources I knew from public health, from my education in public health, and I'd heard about through different classes that I've taken and through different experiences that I've had. And some just involved a Google search and looking through what was out there and what existed already on the internet. All of these resources are already available for free on the internet. They're just compiled in one place now, so you don't have to go searching for them everywhere. It's user-friendly, and it's a way for programs to immediately get the documents and the resources that they were looking for without necessarily having to copy and paste a link or write down a complicated link. You can just Google Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence, you can Google ICADV, you can type in icadv.org, and we actually have it set up in our homepage ribbon. So right there on the homepage, as you kind of scroll down a little bit, you know, you'll see something maybe for one of our fundraisers and maybe some other happening event, and then you'll see this Community Needs Assessment Toolbox just pop up in all of its glory. You're going to be told this is the Community Needs Assessment Toolbox, and it says let's get started. And there are 3 arrows. So some of the information that you can find is what I would call Assessment 101. And if you click on that, it's going to take you to a page that just walks through what is a community needs assessment and what are the 5 steps of a community needs assessment and what do each of those steps entail and why are they important. And I think that that's important because if someone has never completed a community needs assessment before, they can get kind of the basic information just to know what it is right off the bat. It's really easy to go back to the home page. There's a back to the beginning button. And mostly the toolbox in this website is probably the most important part of it, or the prioritized aspect of it, is that it houses resources for different methods of data collection. So if you click on the arrow that says methods, you'll see that there's a bunch of different kinds of methods. We have secondary data, key informant interviews, focus groups, windshield surveys, photo voice, and then a general more resources area, which kind of gives more general documentation on diving deeper into what a community needs assessment is and different processes and different ways you can go about doing it. Probably my favorite part or my favorite piece of the methods is the secondary data. Because it houses all of these different databases in one place. So you don't have to try and rack your brain remembering what was that one website that someone told me to check out that has to do with this kind of information. Yeah, so secondary data, that's what we normally think of when we think of data. It's the quantitative data, the numbers and the statistics and the counts and the rates of different issues across the board. So if I say, this school district has a 53% free and reduced price lunch rate, that gives you information on how many students approximately are receiving free and reduced lunches. Or the poverty rate in this community is 8%. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about secondary data. It's the quantitative, the number. About 10 of them on here that you can just scroll through and find. And these are all secondary databases that I found would be helpful to programs in Indiana specifically, but a lot of them also have national data as well. So like the county health rankings and roadmaps. Anyone in the country can find their county and see how it ranks against other counties in that state for a bunch of different health indicators. Another one is Kids Count Data Center that has all secondary data relating to youth and to children. And that actually, some of that can get down to like school district level, which I think is really interesting. A lot from the US Census Bureau and then also from the CDC, such as the community health status indicators. So I just think it's really helpful that instead of having to Google search and try and remember the names and bounce from tab to tab, they're all here in one spot and you can just click go to that resource and it'll take you right to that website and right to that database so you can start your research that way. All of the other resources on the Community Needs Assessment Toolbox talk about or are ways of getting qualitative data, which is it's sort of the story behind the number. So when we look at poverty and we see that our community has an 8% poverty rate, we can then go to key informant interviews or focus groups or a photo voice project or a windshield survey to find out what does that look like, what does poverty look like in this community, and why do we think that rate is what it is. Right, so I think on a surface level, it would be easy to just go to any of these databases, write down a couple of numbers and say, this is a problem in our community, we should do something about it. But a number only tells you so much information, and so getting that qualitative information, getting the stories, it does a couple of things. A, it helps build an understanding of why that number exists the way that it does. Why is this county's rate higher than any other county in the state? Why did it surprise us? Why are we lower? Or why does that problem exist the way that it does? It also is an opportunity to invite other people into the conversation. And I think that's almost the most, actually I do think that's the most important aspect of it, especially as public health folks or prevention folks who may not belong to a community, but we have to work in that community and work with that community. We can't just come to them with a number and say, this is a problem and we have to do something about it. We have to invite the community in and give them the opportunity to talk about that problem and see how they define it and what their experience of it is. And so that qualitative information, those interviews, those focus groups, that photo voice project, that's the opportunity to invite people in to share their experiences and tell their story. So most of the time when I talk about the different data collection methods that are available to programs, everybody gets super excited about photo voice. Because it sounds like fun. And it also, I think, is the most inviting of all the methods to invite community members in. So the whole idea with photo voice is that you invite a group of people from the community, usually a group of people whose voices often go unheard. So if we think about the different subpopulations of a community, we might think of youth, we might think of the elderly, we might think of LGBTQ, we might think of the homeless population in that community, the folks whose voices often don't get heard. And what photo voice does is it gives them the opportunity to tell their story through the use of photographs. It's a little bit involved. It does take a lot of planning and coordination. So what programs will normally do is have an initial training with their participants, give them the cameras, and then kind of give them some parameters. So what are you looking for from this project? Do you want a day in the life? Do you want to know what are the strengths of your community? What are challenges that you face? Where do you feel safe or unsafe? There's kind of an unlimited realm of possibilities, but you definitely want to set some parameters. Because otherwise you're just going to get a lot of photographs and not know really what to do with them. And then you give them a set amount of time to go out and take pictures, and the photographs that they bring back, they then discuss and they provide captions. And what I normally tell folks is that we often say that a photograph is worth 1,000 words, but the story behind it, the reason why that person took that picture and what it means to them, that's worth 1,000,000 words, right? Because we can show a picture and we'll see something, but it's that person's perspective and what they saw in that photograph that matters. That's where the true rich data comes from in Photo Voice. Some of the resources available, most of them are PDF documents, and a lot of them are sort of just like resource kits, kind of like a walkthrough of this is how you can do a Photo Voice project. So a lot of the different resources are just different ways of doing it, because not one single way is going to work for every single community or every single project. So there's lots of different examples. I think one particular resource that I would draw attention to is the photovoice.org website. It's indicated with the little link icon that lets you know that it's a website. And the reason why I like that one so much is because it provides a Photo Voice statement of ethics. And there are some ethical considerations that we have to take when we're considering doing a Photo Voice project, because we're talking about photographs, right? So we have to be mindful of taking individuals' pictures, where photographs are being taken, who's taking the photographs, especially if you're working with youth. And so that document on that website, the Photo Voice Statement of Ethics at photovoice.org, goes into a lot of rich detail that really helps us understand the ethical considerations and can help us determine what kind of consent forms and what kind of parameters and rules we need to set up. For example, we don't want people taking pictures in bathrooms necessarily, and we don't want pictures in dressing rooms or locker rooms. And if someone doesn't want their picture being taken, we need to help our participants understand some of the ethical considerations around that. So I think that that's a really important one to check out. And also on the Photo Voice page, there are 2 Photo Voice examples. These can be found on YouTube. They aren't necessarily specific to sexual violence prevention. I just think that they're strong examples of what Photo Voice looks like, because they provide the photographs and then also the captions and the descriptions of what those photos mean to the participants. But they also represent a way that you can showcase the photographs after they've been taken. You know, there's a lot of different ways to show off a Photo Voice project, whether it's a YouTube video, a website. Some communities and groups even set up art exhibits and blow the pictures up really large and have the captions available and invite the community in to sort of see and view these photographs and understand this problem in a different way. And so I just provided the links and the videos to 2 Photo Voice projects so that folks can see an example of what it looks like. Sierra's example is a really strong one because she worked with a community that is, by all means, a vulnerable population. She worked with individuals with developmental disabilities, and we talk about how Photo Voice is probably best for groups who go without a voice, and that is a group that goes without a voice on a daily, if not minute-by-minute basis. So Sierra's project working with those individuals in Bloomington, Indiana, I think is a really strong example of a Photo Voice project, and she got some amazing photographs and some amazing captions, and she also has audio of the individuals with developmental disabilities, her participants, captioning their own photos so that their voices can actually literally be heard. So it's not even her reading their captions, but she has the audio of them providing the captions for those photos. One of the more immediate and short-term impacts and outcomes that we saw was this increase in the participants' own feeling of empowerment and inclusion and social support, that through this entire prevention project, so it extended even beyond the Photo Voice project, but through the entire project, they started to feel like they did have a voice and they can use their voice. And so this year, what a lot of our work has been focusing on and what Sierra is doing is working with different groups. So there's a group that works with individuals with developmental disabilities through art, and another one that's going to work with them through writing to help them share their story in new ways. So the Photo Voice was sort of like the tip of the iceberg, and now we're exploring what other ways can this story be shared and what are other ways that we can allow these people's voices to be heard. I think advice that I would give programs is to definitely read about it, use the resources that are available on the Community Needs Assessment Toolbox. They're full of really helpful information. Definitely consider the ethical considerations and have fun with it and really listen to your community and what they're telling you through the photographs that they take and the words that they have to share about those pictures.